G'day, elites. Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and we have a very special interview for you today. The artist who lied, author himself, the magician who created Motive, Ren X. How are you, man? Let's do this.
Doing great. Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out and talk magic and talk theory. And I really want to dive into the artist who lied, because that book is just goes so depth into theory. But before we get into any of that, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself for people that don't know, or they're just coming in and they've heard about you, your little history of magic?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been doing magic sort of seriously. I say seriously because, when you get a magic kit as a kid and kind of mess around, but seriously practicing for probably about 12 years or so now, creating stuff for probably the last 6 or so, I would guess. Putting things out. And I also study cognitive neuroscience. I'm working on a PhD for that currently. So those are kind of my 2 branches of things. I got magic on one side and science on the other.
Jeez, you are flat out. Like you said, you're doing a PhD.
Yeah. I'll be here for a minute.
Yeah, geez, you got any time to sleep or not?
I value sleep quite a lot, especially as someone who studies psychology. Like sleep's really important. So yes. I try to at least get 8-9 hours in every night.
Wow. Great.
Something I would highly recommend. It's important stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm lucky to get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So
you got to change that.
I know. But geez. Well, you can see that kind of what your PhD is doing to coming through into your magic, which is really cool. Can you tell me?
Magic, psychology is, there's so much back and forth between that. So it's definitely informed a lot of my work.
Well, that's great, because you don't, I love the one thing I love about your trailers. You can see that they're so thought-provoking and they take you on a journey when you watch the trailer. They're not just a trailer to just say, hey, here's a quick flashy visual thing. You get the magician who's watching involved in the effect and the story. Why do you kind of do that? Like, is there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for liking them. Not everyone does. It's definitely some people like it, some people hate it, which is completely understandable. It's a difficult balance to strike, because first of all, I want to make sure I'm faithfully representing the effect, and that's kind of the most important thing. So anything you see in the trailers, although they're very stylized and cinematic, they're completely faithful to how the effect is actually done in real life. But the reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted to kind of highlight what the effect could be for someone. I'm really interested in magic as an art form. So showing off this effect in the context of what it could be is really important to me. And also kind of further explaining or showing off this kind of philosophy that I have about magic being more than just eye candy, which, that's not necessarily something that everyone believes. I think there's a ton of magicians out there doing awesome work that has something meaningful to it. But in the age of social media and such, we're definitely kind of in a flashy period.
Oh, definitely. And you working with Murphy's, we get a lot of the times we get magicians contacting us saying, what is the reason to do this trick? What's the premise for this? And that's what you cover in your trailers. You don't just come and say, hey, there's something appearing in your veins. That's it. You come in and you put a story into it, so magicians can go, I've already going in buying this, knowing either way I could perform this. And you've already set the theme and set the mood for that, which
I tried to at least.
Yes. So I think you're hitting that sweet spot. And again, like I said, me personally, I love them. I thought your PhD was in like theater or directing or movies.
Oh, thank you. No, I have a good friend that does a lot of my cinematic stuff.
Oh yeah.
So he has his own kind of camera business that he does. So he shoots a lot of my stuff back home, and I appreciate that a lot from him.
Keep him around. I think there's a very good friendship there. No, that's great. So going into those effects with the idea in mind of what you're studying, is that like go into the way you kind of create effects? Or do you kind of create effects and go, how can I add what I'm studying into that? Or how does your creative process kind of work?
So there's kind of 2 different ways that I go about creating something. I can either start with the illusion that I want to portray, or the message behind it. And they're two very different processes that sometimes they intersect, sometimes they don't. But for instance, the vein effect started out as how can you make something show up in your veins, and then you work out the methodology. And then once you have that, it's the motivation of why should I make something appear in my veins? And I wanted to have that kind of be a deeply personal message for me. The opposite side of that is you can start with a message with motive, for instance, it was the theme of free will. How do you talk about free will in an artistic way that kind of conveys some kind of message or emotion of what it would be like to sit there and obsess over these questions? And that kind of naturally leads you into a mentalism piece. And then from there, it was kind of gets back into the piece of, okay, here's the illusion I want to create, and trying to figure out the methodology from that.
Because I have to be honest, motive, the method behind that was genius. Like I watched that and I was like, oh, electronics. And then you're like,
yeah, no electronics.
No electronics, 100% accuracy. You know, you turn your back. We have something on screen right now to show people what is happening in the trailer. And I watched it and I was like, how? So the thought process and where you kind of go and where you kind of been thinking, and then getting into the methodology behind that. Again, most admiration for you right now, because my mind is just blown on how you went on that journey. As a creator myself, just like my thought process is completely different to yours, and seeing the way you kind of work is like broadening my mind. So I can't wait to kind of delve into that a little bit more. So thank you so much for that. Can you talk a little bit more about motive? Yeah,
I mean, also I have to think Gate and Bloom kind of independently created a similar method a long time ago, and allowed me to release motive, because there's some differences between some of his work and mine. So first of all, I just wanted to shout out him as a thank you for that. But that one's actually funny. I created it many years ago in an IBM meeting. We had a monthly challenge to do some kind of piece of magic with water. And water is not the easiest thing to do magic with, it turns out. So I had water bottles, and then did a mentalism piece where I had an array of water bottles, and someone would pick one up, just like in the trailer. And I kind of forgot about the method for a long time until I was on vacation one time. And it turns out kind of when you're on vacation, your mind kind of clears and things kind of bubble back up to the surface. And that method came back up, and I was like, that's actually good work in a broader context than just water bottles at an IBM meeting.
Yeah.
And I kind of picked it back up, and that's a common thing. The Venous, also the vein effect, is something I came up with in high school.
Really?
Where I happened to have a heart in my veins in my hand. Like it's not super clear. But that's something I was like, oh, that'd be cool. Have something in your veins. And I forgot about it again for 6 years or so.
So great. Because I remember I think I was my second week into working at Murphy's, and Venous come up on as the scheduled effect to come out. And I was like, what is this? And as soon as I saw it, it blew my mind. And that's when I kind of fell in love with all your trailers and the way your thought process works, and started delving in more into your work. But just that fact of so organic that it's your hand, and like it's so beautiful, and there's no funny business about it. It's just so clean. That was created in high school, and we just said 6 years later it's come back into the realms. Is there any more hiding away back there that are gonna see?
Actually there's I can't talk about it yet because it's kind of in the works. There's things that I have a notes app on my phone. I think a lot of people have it, of just ideas, and every now and then I'll kind of scroll back through it, and maybe I've learned something new methodology or something that could make it work, or just something kind of comes back up. But I find that to be a really useful tool for creating.
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine your notes app would be quite lengthy. That's great. I'm excited to say maybe you should just release a book on all these ideas that you have. And
well, most of them are pretty bad. I think that's how it goes.
I think all the creators have some ideas, and you're like, oh, this seems like a good idea at the time. And you read back and you're like, what was I thinking? But then
I can remember one. If you've ever seen, you can take a trash can, like a full trash can, and put like a plastic, like a balloon on it. And if you pull back the balloon and let it go, it releases this like air puff. So I was like, oh, we should strap one of those to your wrist, and then you can shoot air and move things without a thread or anything. Horrible idea. Makes the loudest noise.
You got to imagine that.
And this like large like toilet paper tube thing attached to your wrist. It was not a good idea at all.
But I guess that could lead into, I guess there's probably someone watching right now going, oh, I could hook up an air gun and have a pedal and a tube.
I hope so. You know, if someone can make it work, I would love to be able to move things without touching them.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing with magic, isn't it? You get so many, you can get a good idea, but the method could be always a bit stalling. And like you said, leaving it for a couple of years or having a chat to someone else or putting it out to the industry or the community, that's where ideas develop and grow. So are you heavily involved in like the magic scene where you are? What kind of is like the magic scene where you are? Is there, because you're talking about IBM earlier.
So I'm in Oregon right now and there's like nothing. It's pretty sad actually. Back when I was in Salt Lake City, there was more, there's an IBM club that I'd go to. I had some friends there. But thanks to the internet, kind of most of my magic scene friends is online. I talk to people online every day about magic stuff. So that's kind of where I get involved nowadays.
Yeah, the internet's opened everyone up so much. But that's where I love just getting into the artist who lied. Is that?
Yes, that was quite the obsession for me. Yes. It's something I've worked on for many, many years.
I was going to say, because that didn't seem like something you had a thought about in high school and then revisited 6 years later. Looks like you've been working on it for 6 years later. 6 years.
Well, so I wrote it all during COVID. It was kind of my COVID project when I was at home and had nothing to do. Gave me the excuse to actually put it all on paper. But this is something I've been obsessed with, trying to fit all the pieces together and finding answers for, I don't even know how long. I don't know, 5 years at least, probably. Starting, I mean, the very beginning of it was just kind of random thoughts that I had questions with no answers, and I'd attempt to answer them, and they would not work at all. The pieces just wouldn't fit together.
But I think you got all the pieces together now. Like the book can be.
I think so. I hope people will disagree. I don't know, when it comes to philosophy, if everyone agrees with you, I feel like then you enter something kind of dogmatic, and that's I'm very much against.
Yes. So. Yes. Well, actually, I shouldn't be saying yes. I should be like no. But is there an idea for a continuation of the book then, or are you?
It's a good question. I've thought about it. The book right now is very theory based without a lot of very tangible skills. And I did that on purpose because I wanted people to try to develop those themselves. It's very much about finding what's meaningful to you and using that in magic. And if I lay out some skills, I was afraid that people would just kind of copy those and it would defeat the whole purpose.
Yes.
So I've thought about trying to come up with a sort of a guide of sorts for how I do it, but I don't think the way I do it is the only way by any means.
Oh, yes.
So I'm very inspired by existential type topics. So I'll have something like free will, and then I'll have a sort of very specific creative process for that. But I think it would probably differ quite a bit if you're talking about something like mental health or something, for instance. So I've been hesitant to do any follow-up work as of now, but I don't know, maybe one day.
You can delve into this book and you'll learn so much from it. So definitely the link to The Artist Who Lied is in the description below if you want to check it out. But it is a really good read.
Yeah, and maybe we should take a step back. And I realize most of you probably haven't read it and have no idea what we're talking about. So I should probably give just a kind of a quick overview about what it is. So there's no tricks in the book, and it's not like a book on practical theater development or character development. Really, at its core, it's a proposal for an aesthetic theory of magic. So why is magic an art form? How do you deal with the moral questions of deception with magic? What makes magic meaningful? Why is it not more respected as an art form? What even is art? So these are kind of the questions that I grapple with and try to stitch together some kind of answer to them that hopefully, I mean, it's given me at least some clarity as to, I mean, why am I even doing magic? You know, we're spending our precious time. We only have one life. Why are we spending it doing magic? So these are kind of some fundamental questions to me, at least, that I thought were really important to developing why you do art in the first place.
That's it. So I kind of want you to write a second book now. I'm excited to see where you
Thank
kind
you.
of take this. So we should get off this call. You should get into writing, but that's cool.
Oh, maybe. It's definitely one of the harder things I've done.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. People say it's difficult, and wasn't easy.
No, well done for writing it, and thank you again for writing it. I appreciate it. And there's a video you sent me. I hadn't seen it before. The illusion of the self, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that's it was classic gypsy thread routine. Yes. So it wasn't my effect by any means, but the presentation of it was, and it was kind of a pinnacle example of this philosophy that I talk about and how I apply it to my own art, my own magic. Mm-hmm. And it's like a 1 minute long video of just performance with the gypsy thread, talking about sort of life and death and what it means to be an ego of sorts.
Yes.
I really like Torn and Restored Effects because it has this very deep sort of archetypal theme of rebirth and death. And so it's the perfect type of effect to get into some of those more existential themes.
It's a really good, and I watched it because you sent it to me Tuesday. And
a couple days ago.
Yeah, I watched it like 4 or 5 times again and again. Just because I do get involved. Like I watched it the first time, not even kidding, straight after I watched it again. Just because the routine is so lovely. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind if we shared it on a full performance on a Sunday? So we could just post that whole video so people can sit down and enjoy it in its entirety as well?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, it's less than a minute or something, so it shouldn't be too long to do that.
It is a really nice routine. And like you said, it is so thought-provoking, and it gets right into your head, and you can watch that routine. It's a really good. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, well, thank you for enjoying it.
Do you make content often for I know in the world we live in nowadays, a lot of people want to, like, I know magicians that don't even touch social media, but I know people that a lot of magicians that obviously do. What do you? Is there places where people can follow you? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is kind of my main place. I have kind of 2 styles of content that I'll do. One is the sort of necessary evil piece, which is to kind of just grow my following as an artist, and as trying to create a career in magic, people have to kind of know who you are. Yeah. So there's that piece, and then there's the sort of a more meaningful piece. So occasionally I'll do posts that have kind of a short essay of sorts, almost, or a short performance like the one that we just watched, that like minute long one. So there's kind of a mix between those two. I'm not thrilled about the necessary evil content.
But is there I know you say it's the necessary evil. I think also too, being true to yourself in socials is really good. I know it's like that.
It's hard. Yes,
it is. Oh, it is 100% hard. But I feel like as a performer too, there's that's that classic cliche thing, Instagram versus reality. I know when I fell into it again, when I first started doing social media, I started being that character or who you thought people would want to see. And then when I started doing the stuff I kind of wanted to do, there's that backlash of people would stop watching my content because they're like, who's these 2 different people that I'm watching? So,
it's a tough battle, for sure. Kind of before I started creating a lot of my stuff, I kind of thought through that issue pretty deeply. And it's one of the reasons I use the pseudonym Ren X. Big surprise, that's not my real name. It's not to like hide my identity or anything. Well, it is, but sort of in the inverse. It's so that people in my real life at school and such can't find my art stuff. So it allows me to be a little more authentic with what I want to share with people, without the fear of, some other random professor or something finding it and the backlash. Like, who's this kid making this cringy video about some angsty free will topic? So that's kind of how I've solved that problem for me.
Is that something you think you would continue to do in after your PhD and in normal life, live under as like a pseudonym for your magic, or would you want to merge the two?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very useful. Yeah, yes. No, I appreciate it. It's the things I like to talk about. Yeah, I think so. For me, at least, it's the right call for me. It's really difficult to try to balance. I feel like a professional career outside of magic or outside of the arts with the arts. And a pseudonym really kind of helps solve that problem a lot for me. And it doesn't have to be like academics or anything, but everyone kind of looks you up on social media before they hire you these days. And maybe some people are comfortable with sharing their art in that way and being open with it. Me personally, I'm a little more hesitant to do that, which is, probably born of insecurities around being authentic, which is, something a lot of people struggle with. But so I don't know, maybe one day if I'm kind of merge these two sides of my life together. But I think at that point I may have used the pseudonym for too long and people won't know the real name.
Yes.
Which is another problem. My real name is Taryn Rehovit, which is not easy to spell or Google. So for trying to get your name out there, it's difficult. So those are kind of the two pieces.
Okay. Yeah. Because that was, I didn't know whether you wanted to mention your real name on here, because obviously I
so like I said, it's kind of the reverse. I don't care if people in magic are able to find my other stuff. It's more in the real world finding my art.
Okay.
So if you Google Taryn Rehovit, ideally it's harder to find the angsty existential magic performances.
It's an interesting thing to live under a different name and when you're performing and stuff. So
I think it can also, it can be dangerous. You can kind of create these two different personalities of sorts and get lost into who the real you is.
Yes.
So and that's something I think in the past, when I first started using the pseudonym, I kind of fell into when I was doing more performing rather than consulting, which is what I do nowadays. I definitely had this character that I'd perform under, and then I'd have the whole different name that I would use. And I think, and it was also during a time where, I was young and trying to still kind of discover who I am. I mean, I still am, but even more so. And it was easy to kind of get lost into where does Taryn begin and Ren start, and where it was very, very murky. Yes. So that's something, if you're going to consider using a pseudonym, you have to be very, very careful with. So nowadays, I don't think there's any character really behind Ren X. It's kind of just me in the sort of most authentic piece.
The name.
Just the name.
The name of the two dividers. Everything else is combined. That's cool, because I was going to say that would make a really interesting art, like a really, really interesting performance piece.
Daniel Madison has done a lot of stuff, like some of his older videos. I think examining topics like that, which if you're interested in, I think they're all very beautiful.
Like you said, magic is an art form. I know when we talk about having quick tricks and stuff, I don't even like I don't even like the word trick. I don't like the idea, because I feel like magic should be this. I know there's like you said, a time and a place. I think there is. Overall, magic is a piece that you should enjoy with your spectators. We love it so much. We want to show the spectators how much we love it. We want to take them on a journey and make them experience why we love magic. So I think the fact that you can kind of delve in that and enjoy it in a different realm. I know we're probably upsetting magicians right now going, no, this should be like this crazy, wacky, fun thing. And like you said, there is a time and a place, but we should also experience and research a different realm. As performers and as artists, we should be able to grow and adapt and learn different types. I'm sure painters out there don't just normally paint, one style. They kind of experience everything to kind of grow as performers and artists. So
yeah, I think that's how you kind of develop your own style. I mean, if you only try one thing, then how do you know what you actually like and what's a truest form of expression for you?
Exactly. 100%. Actually, no, I'm not agreeing. You keep hitting all the truth buttons, and I was like, oh, that's great. Yes. And then I was like, oh no, we shouldn't be doing this. So that's
I know. I think it's the conversation is what's important.
Yes.
Coming into we share the same opinion is what it is. I don't think we have to disagree on all fronts. It was more about, I just hope you don't agree with everything I've written in the book, for instance.
Yes.
I'm sure there's definitely some controversial things I think I've written in it. So I hope there's something that sparks someone to be like, I don't know about that one. Because that means you're thinking. And that's
Yes.
really the goal.
Yes, I was about to say, it sounds like you'd be interested in having that conversation with someone that would come back and say,
absolutely. If someone says like, this is BS, like, why did you write this? This makes no sense. Yeah, please contact me. I'm happy to talk it out in a civil way. I'm obsessed with this stuff, so I'll talk about it for hours. And I think the disagreement is really where you come to new insights.
Yes,
the conversation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So morality is it's the tricky question. I mean, what is moral, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's there's been philosophers who talked about that for thousands of years, and there's no good answer or consensus at this point, at least as far as I'm concerned. If you have an answer to that, please let me know, because that would solve a lot of the world's problems.
That's true.
But I think the first, in order to like answer is magic moral, you have to kind of ask the question of what even is deception in the first place. Mm-hmm. What counts as deception versus like a lie, for instance? Is it the case that we're actually lying with magic? If you palm something, is that actually a lie? It's a tricky question. So this is kind of the start of an existential crisis I had personally, where I started questioning pretty much everything, starting with reality in general. Like, how do you know that you're watching this on a computer or a phone? Yes. How do you know that's actually there and you're not asleep, dreaming, or in a mental hospital with catatonic schizophrenia or something, mm-hmm. and this is all in your head? So truth, like actual truth, something that you can prove without the shadow of a doubt, is something that doesn't really exist, at least in my opinion. I mean, that's kind of a whole branch of philosophy, called the skeptics. Mm-hmm. So if truth doesn't really exist, then what on earth is deception?
Yeah.
Or the opposite of truth, of something that doesn't actually exist. And that's a really tricky question to answer if you're wanting to take it into something more pragmatic, like morality, or something you're wanting to use to actually help guide your actions. Because you can think about this stuff all you want, and at some point you have to realize that it probably doesn't matter all that much, because you're going to go about living your life anyways. But without those foundational questions answered, it's really difficult to try to build up something to actually guide you. Mm-hmm. So there's a large portion of the book talks about that, kind of trying to build some kind of bedrock to build everything on top of, at least as far as magic goes. So it's I don't attempt to claim to answer any question about how do you prove something to be true. That is something way beyond my pay grade that yes. I frankly will never come up with any good answer to. In the context of magic, though, I think I do have something to offer.
Yes. Well, it's good to even ask those questions. Literally last weekend, I was having the same conversation with my wife about what are feelings, what is emotion.
It's a scary question.
It is. It's a scary question, but it was so good to have that question, because it opened up the world and opened up your mind a lot more to a lot more new things. I like that you've asked those questions, but then also delved into your magic, because you, like you said, you do know what you're talking about in magic to kind of help.
I like to think so, at least.
But you're diving into it.
Yeah. So in the terms of magic, at least, the answer that, I don't know if answer is the right word, yes. tool that I've used to give me some sort of direction in mm-hmm. life and not just wander aimlessly is it's kind of a Nietzschean perspective on truth, which is this idea that there's multiple truths out there. And when I use truth, I'm really thinking more belief. Mm-hmm. I believe the computer's in front of me. I believe that I'm out here in the world doing things. I don't know for sure, but it's a belief. Yes. And different people have different beliefs about the world. Maybe you thought you fed the cat, but in reality you didn't. But so there's these beliefs that aren't necessarily religious in nature, but are just kind of about the state of the world. I mean, as magicians, we're very familiar with false memories, right? Mm-hmm. So someone believed they saw a card go into the middle of the deck when it actually didn't. So that when I say belief, it's not a religious connotation at all. But when we have this idea of belief, that kind of answers the question of what deception is. So deception, it would just be defined as the portrayal of a belief that you yourself don't believe in. So for instance, I don't believe that I can actually levitate a card. But if I'm going to try to sell that lie or that, I'm trying to get someone else to believe that.
Yes.
And if they do believe that, and levitation of a card is kind of a bad example because most people aren't going to believe that to be true. But putting a card in the middle of a deck is something that you could very well cause someone to believe. And once they believe it, it becomes a genuine version of the truth. There's no way for me to know if everything out here is real. So I don't know for sure that the lie I just told is actually a lie. Maybe just by dumb luck, a lie that I told actually aligns with the real metaphysical truth of the universe. And what that means is that deception is actually one of the most powerful creative tools available to us as humans. You are genuinely creating someone's reality when you lie to them, a new branch of reality for them, a new competing truth. And that makes magic as an art form something that utilizes deception as its most principal tool to have the potential to be one of the most powerful art forms. That's kind of an insane tool that you have. If art's about kind of expressing yourself and trying to get someone else to have an experience, well, then using deception to literally write the reality for them and causing them to have that experience is an insanely powerful tool.
And like you said, at the end of it, become the truth for them. And it is no longer a lie. And once something's the truth for them, that's when you have one of the most genuine experiences that you can have.
Yeah. And if you actually believe it to be true, you're experiencing your own reality.
Yes. And it's hard to pedal back from that and think that, no, that wasn't real, because when you believe something so much,
it's tough.
It's concrete.
On the contrary, though, it's also an amazing tool to help expose people to more controversial opinions or truths. In the book, I talked about one of my favorite books, which is The Things They Carried, which is a war story. And the reason I like it so much is that war, for most of us, is something that is very impersonal. There's no way that we can ever really understand or experience any of the horrors of war unless you've been in it yourself. And the author uses deception to sort of mix reality and fiction in a way that it's unclear what actually was real in the story and what isn't. And because it's mixed with reality, you start to believe these stories that were manufactured in a way to make this experience of war more accessible to the everyday person. And since you take it to be true, you actually experience those emotions, which is the same thing I think magic has the power to do.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about miscalling memory and things, I know that's quite often the fact of when you try to remember something back. I'm talking, you're going about the what you were talking about there with war and that guy making up the false truths mixed in with a bit of the truth. I know when you call back to a memory, you're even doing the same thing there yourself. Your brain's making shortcuts to the end goal. And then when someone asks you a question about something in the middle that your brain's forgotten about, you make a new path. You make up a new false memory, which you believe to be true. You tell that person, now your brain thinks it's true. And
every time you remember something, you're rewriting that memory just a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary when you think about it, in that, if you remember one of your favorite memories over and over again, over time, it's getting further and further away from the truth, what actually happened.
Exactly. So you're lying to yourself there to create the truth, to make a thing that you believe in. So I don't think, me personally, I don't think magic is a part of that. Like magic, you're lying, but you're making that truth, you're making that reality, you're making that connection.
And that's where the morality gets into it. Like if you have this powerful of a tool, it should not be exempt from the moral discussions, which I think at least a lot of the magicians I've talked to kind of have this opinion that because magic is an art and the things we're doing are very innocent, it should be kind of exempt from this moral quality, which is something that I personally disagree with and have struggled a lot with. I think some of the most powerful magic are the ones that start to blend truth with reality, like Darren Brown, for instance. Sometimes it's kind of unclear what is a trick and what is actual hypnosis or actual cold reading or something. And because of that, it's super powerful, but now you also enter this sort of gray zone with morality.
Yes. And you do get people coming along saying, believing you have supernatural powers and to help.
Yeah, I mean, great example. Uri Geller, right? Is a perfect example of that. That was someone who did exactly that, and it was really powerful. But is that moral?
Yes, yeah, because there's that. I guess that's people now down that garden path thinking they want to get superpowers too, and I know. I think it's that illusion of you keep going in this big circle of what's right and wrong, but I think
every time you tell someone that what you do is like a complete lie, you're losing some of the power to make something meaningful. Yeah. Because once they accept the lie, that's when you get into that true power of deception of writing someone's reality and allowing them to experience something that's true for them. It's tough. It's a tough balance.
It is a tough, because I also know that if I go in and say that, and then I go do a performance, people go, "You can read minds. What are you talking about? You just said you couldn't." And then they kind of go into the realm of believing it more, that I was just doing it to throw them off. Now I have got this. It's this. It's so hard to know what a spectator's going to think when you're performing for them. So,
and you can't even begin to sort of calculate all of the different consequences. No. And that's, I think, a risk that's just inherent in engaging in this field.
Yes.
Not everyone, so that's another point. It's not everyone agrees that magic even uses deception in the first place. And there's some good arguments for that. I don't necessarily agree with them. But if you take to be that magic uses deception, you're making a career out of lying. And that's something that's typically seen as immoral, and for good reason. Lying causes a lot of suffering in the world. And trying to figure out what cases are allowed and what are not, or maybe not allowed, but allowed for you, what you personally give yourself permission to do, it's a tricky question. And I think it should be a hard question. It's something that people should think about. Yeah,
there's so many times where there's obviously pickpocketing is not a good thing to be doing to people, but it's in the realm of magic. Magic is kind of this overall thing where things are branching off from magic that are really bad, or you shouldn't be doing them. But as magicians, we're like, oh, it's a little bit of magic. We kind of create that gray area ourselves as magicians. You go, it's okay, we can do that. And
should we actually? Can we actually? Yeah,
exactly. Like, why for myself? Why can I put myself above other people saying, oh, I'm okay with this? So that's that crazy moral line of.
It is, yeah, and like I said, a lot of people just think that the things we're doing with magic are innocent enough that it's exempt from that. And I think a lot of the cases that's probably true. If you're making a coin vanish with a false transfer or something, it's a pretty innocent use of deception. I use an example of like I lied to you that I picked up a rock today. Like before this call, I picked up a rock. That's a lie. I didn't. Imagine you probably don't care that I just lied about that. It doesn't.
I was just going to say, it's also the conviction of it too, of how you say it made me kind of believe it was a nonchalant thing that like I picked up a rock today. I was about
because it's such an innocent lie, where the content of the lie is sort of unimportant. You kind of get away with a lot of the moral issues, and I think magic kind of falls into that in a lot of cases. But once you start trying to do the more meaningful magic that I've described, that's when it gets dangerous. And the solution that I came up with personally, and this is kind of a very brief solution because I go more into detail with it, is that using the lie to tell the truth. So there's certain truths in the universe, or opinions or expressions that cannot be expressed through words. And the reason being that words are always a symbol for something. They're one step away from the actual thing. So if I say the word rose, the word rose isn't a rose. It's a symbol for a rose. And because of that, everything you describe in language is going to be one step away from the actual experience. And so you can use deception though, to get people to have a true experience, and allow you to express something that would normally not be allowed or be able to be expressed through words. So for instance, an emotion for something, like I can say I'm happy, but you don't really know what that feels like unless I create the reality for you. So in that case, I'm using deception to tell the truth. And once you've experienced the truth, the deception is sort of inconsequential. The story of how you got there is still very consequential, but the fact that you lied in the first place is really just a vehicle for the truth. And that's kind of one of the more useful or pragmatic compasses that I've used personally, is if I'm using magic to tell a truth, using deception to tell a truth. It's very paradoxical, but I think it's a good answer to solving some of those moral questions.
I like that. It's very paradoxical to lie, to tell the truth. But it's also in a beautiful moment to experience.
I often use an example of like a boat, where you have an island and the island is the truth or the experience you want to share. And deception is the boat that lets you cross the river. Once you get to the island, you don't need the boat anymore. You're not in the water anymore. So the deception is kind of inconsequential once you reach the truth. And I think it's kind of a useful metaphor for understanding, because it's a difficult thing for me to at least to express into words. I don't think I've necessarily always done the best job with expressing things like that. They're difficult things.
Yes. Yeah. I've struggled with words the best of times. If you've ever seen any of my videos, or even now chatting to me, you can see I'm bouncing about my words. I get caught up in my own head of the visuals of everything. And I got that boat in my head already. Or I'm already trying to think of words to describe how that's making me feel. And I can't. But the image in my head is so strong of that boat.
And that's why I think art's so important. It allows us to express those things that you can't with words.
Yeah. The best performances are the ones that you don't need to say anything to. And not just for language barriers, but the have that emotion. You can tell the emotion through the performer.
That actually, that kind of brings up an interesting thing that I've always struggled with, is attaching meaningful patter to magic in a way that isn't superficial.
Yes.
So I might upset some people with this, so I apologize if I upset you in advance. But there's a lot of magic out there where you like put a poem on top of like cups and balls, for instance. And I think it's a really superficial attachment, wherein you could remove the magic and you still get the meaning behind the poem. And I think it's really difficult to create patter that the magic itself is actually integral to the storytelling. And if you remove the magic, you actually lose some intelligibility of the story that you're giving. And that's a really important piece to creating meaningful magic.
You don't want the script and the performance fighting against each other to...
Exactly. That to be fully integrated, where both pieces are necessary in order to actually glimpse the meaning behind it.
And that's a very fine line too, to have.
It is.
Those.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that you like believe in. I think it's worth putting in the work to try to integrate it in a way that works.
Yes.
And I think that's something that's supposed to be hard.
Yeah. 100%. As magicians, as artists, we should grow and adapt with our routines and be able to, have that performance and that written piece and the scripting. And nothing's ever perfect, nothing should ever be perfect. You should always.
That's something I think a lot of artists struggle with. Is the perfection. I know I do. It's I want everything to be perfect.
Oh yeah, I think something I'm happy with it at the end of the day. I'm like, okay, this is great, and then I will post it or I'll do something, and then my poor wife, I'll have 20 different versions within an hour saying I should add this to it, I should take this down, I should redo this, and I think that's good. I think that's healthy also too, to be always second guessing yourself.
To an extent, you can definitely become lost in that.
Yes.
I think.
Well, yeah.
It's
You don't want to be second guessing yourself for the next 20 years and getting down that rabbit hole. But I think as a performer, you should be second guessing why you're doing that stuff. Again, for morality's sake, is this good for not only yourself, or is this good for the community or whoever you're performing for? And is this good for you as an artist? And I like to second guess myself because it helps me grow. But I won't give it any more than a day or two, because
you're better than I am then.
there's other things I should be focusing on. There's bigger fish to fry, as they say. Like I need to, if I got caught up on all that stuff that I've been second guessing myself for the last 34 years, I'm going to be a mess. But
I mean, to be honest, writing that book was quite a mess, because it was pretty much 5 years of second guessing every opinion I had on magic and such. So I guess, I don't know, sometimes something comes out of it, but it's not always the most pleasant experience during it.
You're in your own personal journey through that. Like COVID,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, COVID wasn't the best time for a lot of people to sit down, and it was a struggle for, I know a lot of magicians struggled. So to sit down and write such in-depth feeling and emotion and to dive into that yourself, for people reading it, they're not reading all the stuff that you'd written before that, or the ideas you had before that, or the journey you took to get to what you put on paper. So I could imagine it would have been a bit of a hard time for you to get things out and talk about things.
Very cathartic though.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, hey, actually, it's kind of, I have this space now available that I can do other things with. And it's not just rethinking about the same questions, looking for holes in the arguments and things. Now that it's on paper, I'm like, all right, if I'm wrong, at least, it's out there. I've committed to it.
Yes.
At this point. So.
And it opens up, like you said, the discussion with other people that want to read it and come back to you and continue the conversation going. I can't even say conversation.
Yeah, you got to start it at least. So
yes,
if it's always up here, then no one's talking about it.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. If you're...
Not that I'm the first one to talk about these things by any means. I don't want to give anyone the impression that I think I'm like, come up with the answers to all these questions. These have been around for a long time. If
anything, you're continuing the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
my step in it.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like the conversation was like when you were in high school and you come with this idea, the conversation was started back then. And like this, the people have been talking about this for years, and you've only just come out now with your ideas on this and putting it out into the world.
I agree. I mean, another struggle that personally, it's like I struggled with this idea of like narcissism, where like the thing that I'm saying is actually important and worth reading. It's like it's almost feels narcissistic to believe that like I actually have something worthy to contribute. And I think that's another thing that artists have a hard time overcoming.
Yes.
I certainly haven't completely overcome it, but at a certain point I was like, I'm thinking about this anyways, may as well write it down.
I think, it is hard to think that what you're saying matters, but no matter what you say, there's always going to be someone that listens and kind of takes it on board, because you're going to hit that connection with someone. We're all human after all. So we've all had those thoughts. And to have that person's on the same wavelength, you could be talking they could be thinking, I can't be the only one talking like this, and no one's talking about it. Then you come out and say, I've got these feelings. And they're going, I feel exactly the same way. There's someone else out there thinking like me, and opens them up more. So
that's the hope. Yeah.
Yes. It's always that hard thing of like, does anyone want to actually listen to what I say? Talk.
Yeah. And not everyone will. I definitely think this is some of the things I talk about, and it won't resonate with people, and people are like, who gives a shit? It's, and that's okay.
But yeah, exactly. Yell as loud as you can, because there's going to be someone that's listening. And if there's not, that's okay too. Like you said, it's cathartic for yourself to get it out.
Yeah.
We should all do that every now and then. Yeah.
I think so. It's been personally helpful, at least. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I just got really involved in that. That's good.
Yeah. I guess we solved all the world's problems.
That's it. We're done now. We can knock off.
Yeah.
So it's I know we only have 13 of your books available left in our store. Is there any more?
Oh, really? I didn't know how many was left.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure that we had enough that if we were talking about it, we want to make sure people were not going to run out and we're going to sell out, and then you weren't going to have any more available. Well, also too, I think if you would be interested, on our Discord on Saturdays, have you ever spoke to Perseus?
Very briefly, yeah.
Because
I know you do like the sort of chat every
Saturday. Yeah. So we have guest speakers come on every now and then, and we had Perseus come on, and we had a massive conversation. I think it went for like 3.5, 4 hours the other night about art and magic and why we do the things we do. And we had because he got so in depth with it, because he loves moments for magic, and he's so against quick tricks and things. And it was just so interesting to hear him talk about why he talks about the things he talks about and why he does the magic. He goes, because I asked him a question and I said, "Oh, so when did you get into magic?" And he goes, "I hate that question." Because the question we should be asking right now is, why are we still doing magic? Why do we do it?
That's a good point.
And I was
That's a good
like,
point.
as soon as he said it, I was like, great point. Because why do we do it? We do it because I do it because I love it. And I want to make
But
people.
what does that mean? What does loving it
that's
mean?
when that conversation's went. So I think if you would be down to kind of have you come on and answer all the questions for people and talk about this. And I know a lot of magicians that could be coming on to the Discord would be very excited to talk to you about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite thing to talk about. About it for hours. So yeah.
Well, what we'll do is we'll give people time to read your book.
Okay.
Have things about it, and then we'll get you on the Discord to do a chat, and then we can talk about the book in depth. It'll be really good.
That sounds awesome. Sounds like a lot of fun.
I'm really actually excited because I feel like it's cathartic. It'll be cathartic. It'll be really good to get things off our chest. It'll be good to talk about the things about why we do what we do.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Ren. I really appreciate it, mate.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on here. It's been a lot of fun. It's
been an absolute pleasure, and I definitely will keep in touch because I want to continue this conversation on and offline. This will be really great.
Yeah, sounds good.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Cheers.
See
you, bye. Whoa, look at this. Well, so much good magic in there. You need to check this out. You're not going to regret it. I pinky promise you. Oh, whoa. Look at this. This shining diamond over here. What is this? Beautiful. You probably should click that if you haven't subscribed yet. But then you should definitely check out this because this is good. Treat yourself.